The plaintiff? Still not hearing you.
The plaintiff is ready, Your Honor.
All right, good, thank you. All right, has everybody, to the extent that, let's see. All right, everybody understands that this round is going to be taped. Members of the Colorado Bar Association might be taking pictures of the competition or perhaps even video during the round. Each team's participation in the state tournament grants automatic permission in the use of these photos by the Bar Association. Is there anybody that is not participating that is not associated with one of these teams? All right, if so, you're ethically obligated to leave the courtroom, and I would ask you to do so. All right, folks, there will be no recesses allowed with the exception of those granted for a health emergency, and certainly not between the end of one witness examination and the beginning of closings. We won't take a break before closing arguments. Do any of the scoring panelists, given what we see, and I'll let the scoring panelists take a look at everybody, do any of you believe that you might have any kind of a conflict? All right, good. All right. Any disputes arising out of this competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. Compliance by participants with time requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. All right, I just want to make sure that, all right, let's start with each side introducing team members, starting with the plaintiff. Wait, before we do that, hang on just a moment. All right, let's do that. So let's start with the plaintiff's counsel.
Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, my name is Jasmine Michievich, and I will be delivering the direct examination of Dakota Weirs, the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs, and the plaintiff's closing statement. At this time, I would like to ask your permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves.
Yes, please repeat your last name for me.
Sorry, what was that?
Counsel, please repeat your last name for me.
Jasmine Michievich.
Thank you, Ms. Michievich. Please go ahead and introduce your colleagues.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Danielle McGowan. I will be delivering the direct examination of Carson Durst as well as the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Benjamin Ocon, and I will be delivering the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams, as well as the opening for the plaintiff team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ocon.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to ask your permission for the plaintiff's witnesses to introduce themselves.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. I am Cesar Aguirre. I will be portraying Dakota Weirs for you today.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Daniel Jones, and I'll be portraying Carson Durst today.
Welcome, Mr. Jones.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. I am Tanner Bertram, and I will be playing Dr. Casey Rogers.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bertram. We appreciate you.
Good evening, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Jackson Pagano, and I am the timekeeper.
Thank you, Mr. Pagano. We appreciate it. Who else?
Your Honor, the plaintiff has no further attorneys or witnesses to introduce.
Thank you, Ms. Michievich. How about for the defense?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Jasper Bloom, and I will be delivering the opening statement for the defense, conducting the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, and conducting the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Carter Squirrel. I'll be conducting the cross-examination of Carson Durst and the direct examination of Skylar Weirs.
Thank you, Mr. Squirrel.
Good afternoon. My name is Brianna Hirsch, and I will be conducting the cross-examination of Dakota Wheels, the direct examination of Blake Downcourt, in delivering the closing argument on behalf of the defense. May our witnesses now introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon. My name is George Bradley, and I am Blake Downcourt.
Good afternoon. My name is Ava Batye, and I'm Skylar Weirs.
Good afternoon. My name is Kobe Horowitz, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you all.
Good morning. My name is I. Marguerite, and I'm the timekeeper for the defense.
Hi, Ms. Marguerite. Thank you very much. All right. I'd like to swear in the team members, and I guess to the extent there's a gallery, we'll swear in the gallery, the scoring panelists and the witnesses. So please, team members, other than witnesses, please raise your right hands. Do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and the rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any no's? All right. Witnesses, please. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions that are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any no's? All right. If there are any gallery members, this is sort of rhetorical, including coaches and family members and friends, if there are any, you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship, both during and after this mock trial round. And finally, scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. And I guess we will include the timers. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Outstanding. Thank you all, and thanks for your patience. All right. Is there anything else we need to, any preliminary matters that we need to discuss? Starting with the plaintiff.
Your Honor, because this is occurring virtually, we would like to ensure that, or we would like to request permission to share exhibits on the screen so that Your Honor and all witnesses do not have to refer to them.
That request is granted.
And the plaintiff would also like to reserve all remaining time after the closing for rebuttal.
Of course, that's granted as well.
No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Anything from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense
Mr.
asked
Bloom.
that if there is a technical issue in which one of the team members cannot rejoin the Zoom, that they be allowed to text their teammates in order to keep them updated on the situation.
What might that look like?
Your Honor, if a member of either team cannot rejoin the meet because of some internet issue or computer issue, they would simply text one of the team members that is still in the meet to inform them that they are unable to join so that we can.
Oh, I see. Just for that purpose. I assume there's no objection. Let's hear, is there an objection from the plaintiffs on that?
We have no objections, Your Honor.
That request will be granted, Mr. Bloom. And certainly if that happens, let's bring that to our attention and we will take care of it. Stay.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, we would also like to mention that there are 2 Weirs in court today, and as such, for the jury's sake, we would ask to be allowed to call both Weirs by their full names. We mean no disrespect. We would just like to keep things clear for the jury.
That is granted, and that point is well taken. I personally prefer not to have people use given names in court, that they should use surnames. So under those circumstances, I'll grant that relief.
Yes, Your Honor. No further matters for the defense.
Thank you. All right. All right, and as a general reminder, and the judges, please feel free to chime in. I want to make sure to give, in between each witness, I want to give the judges an opportunity to score. So that'll sort of seem like a slowing down, but we'll try to keep things moving. All right, are we ready to start with openings?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Blue. Are the judges ready? Timer ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, fantastic. Thank you.
May I proceed?
You may. Thank you, sir.
This case is all about a high school kid whose dreams of becoming a world-class piano player were destroyed when he developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma caused by the defendant's product, Lush Fertilizer. Dakota Weirs is 18 years old. He works hard in school. He gets good grades, and he's an active member of his community. You'll learn that he was a member of the National Honor Society, president of his high school student government, and even found the time to volunteer at a local homeless shelter. You will learn that more than anything else, Dakota loved to play the piano, and that when he was just 7 years old, he used to sit on his grandfather's knees, learning about each sound and how each key would feel under his fingers, learning how each chord would come together. He started to take lessons soon after his grandfather passed away and got to a point where he loved it so much that he practiced several hours a day. He dreamed of becoming a world-class piano player, and you'll learn that he was well on his way to making those dreams a reality. He had even received a full-ride scholarship to Juilliard, one of the finest music conservatories in the world. His dreams were just at his fingertips until a year ago when things began to take a turn. Just before he was about to leave for Juilliard, he began to feel sick all the time. He experienced rapid weight loss, and he was tired constantly. He had chest pains, swollen, painful lymph nodes, and he could not stop coughing. He was in so much pain, and he was so tired that he could not sit at the piano for more than a few minutes, therefore making a recital or performance impossible. He saw countless doctors and underwent one test after another before he was finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You may be asking, how could this happen? How could one young life be changed so drastically, seemingly overnight? Well, you'll hear that in addition to his school, piano homework, and volunteer work, Dakota also worked at a local landscaping company, where his responsibilities included cutting lawns, trimming hedges, and applying a product called Lush Fertilizer. You'll learn that this product was rushed to the market despite evidence that its key component, a bonding agent called Drufo, was carcinogenic. And you'll learn that despite knowing that baking or heating its product would remove any risk that it was carcinogenic, Lush Fertilizer CEO chose not to do so. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is our job to prove to you that the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, was negligent and caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And we must prove these things to you by the preponderance of the evidence, which simply means that they are more likely true than not. We will meet our burden by calling 3 witnesses. First, you will hear from Dakota Weirs. He will tell you about his life before and after he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He will tell you that despite working with Lush Fertilizers closely for almost 4 years, nobody ever told him that it was carcinogenic, and nobody ever told him that he might be putting his life in danger by simply going to work. Second, you will hear from Carson Durst, who is a product development engineer on the research and development team at Lush Fertilizers for 4 years. He will tell you that Lush Fertilizer executives knew that Drufo may be linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but decided to keep that information away from the public and did nothing to make sure it was safe for the public. And finally, you will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, who holds a PhD in agriculture and entomology. Dr. Rogers will tell you that Drufo was rushed to the market without sufficient studies to its safety. He will describe to you how he performed his own study that led to his conclusion that prolonged exposure to Drufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma to a high degree of scientific probability. Ladies and gentlemen, at the conclusion of this case, after you have heard all the facts and the evidence, my co-counsel, Jasmine Macievich, will again walk you through the facts and the evidence, and she will ask you to find Lush Fertilizers negligent in rushing Drufo to the market without an appropriate warning label. And she will also ask you to find Lush Fertilizers liable for causing Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Mr. Bloom,
The plaintiff just told you that this was a case about a high school kid whose dreams were crushed in an attempt to place blame on Lush Fertilizer. This blame, however, is misplaced. And that's what this case is really about. Misplaced blame. My name is Jasper Bloom, and I, along with my co-counsel, Brianna Hirsch and Carter Squirrel, represent the defendant, Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. Today's case is about Dakota Weirs. Mr. Weirs worked for a landscaping company with several fertilizers, including that which was manufactured by Lush. After being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, Mr. Weirs, understandably distraught, wanted an explanation, and he's attempted to blame Lush Fertilizer. But the evidence will show that this blame is misplaced. Today, you will hear from the plaintiff first. First, from Dakota Weirs himself. Mr. Weirs will tell you that his non-Hodgkin lymphoma was caused solely by the negligence of Lush Fertilizer. But Mr. Weirs will also admit to foregoing the use of personal protective equipment when working with fertilizer. Mr. Weirs will also cite the lack of a warning label on Lush's product, but you will see that label and how it clearly mentions that one should use said protective personal equipment when working with Lush. Next, you will hear from Carson Durst. Mr. Durst is a former Lush employee who was fired for poor performance. Mr. Durst claims that Lush knew of a possible carcinogenic effect in its fertilizer and that it pressured researchers to find that Drufo was safe to use. Despite this, Mr. Durst waited a decade and a half to bring up his concerns to anyone. These concerns rest solely on a purported email that has not been found despite Lush turning over its entire email servers to the plaintiff's own lawyers. Next, you will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers. Dr. Rogers claims to have a study linking Drufo to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. But not only is this study fundamentally flawed, it has not been peer-reviewed, it has not been replicated, and it has not been published. Next, you will hear from the defense. First, from Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer. Mr. Doncourt will tell you that after rigorous testing, all evidence pointed to the safety of Drufo and the lack of a necessity to bake the fertilizer. Next, you will hear from Skylar Weirs. Ms. Weirs is an expert investigative journalist who will tell you that fertilizers with Drufo in them are safer for the environment than those without because of the reduction of nitrate in the soil. Finally, you will hear from Dr. Devin Williams. Dr. Williams has several decades of experience in the field of toxicology and has worked at the Lush R&D labs for 10 years. Dr. Williams will testify to the overwhelming statistical evidence for the safety of Drufo. He will also clarify its ban in the EU, which, despite what the plaintiff might want you to think, is not because of a possible carcinogenic effect in Drufo, but because of a misplaced concern on the environmental effect, which itself was caused by poor testing conditions. Members of the jury, in this trial, the plaintiff has the burden of proof. They must prove two key facts. First, they must prove that there was a risk unobvious to a reasonable person. Second, they must prove that Lush did not do their duty in protecting the public from any unobvious risk. By the end of the trial today, the plaintiff will have failed to meet this burden, because not only will the evidence show that Drufo is not carcinogenic and therefore Lush did everything in their duty to protect the public, but it will show that if there was any negligence in this case, it was that of Dakota Weirs. Members of the jury, it is then up to you to find the defendant, Lush Fertilizer Incorporated, not liable on the plaintiff's claim of negligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. All right, first witness, please. I tell you what, before we call the first witness, let me let the judges score the openings briefly. All right. Ms. Yushevich, is this you?
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
Good.
The plaintiff would like to call Dakota Weirs to the stand.
All right. Dakota Weirs, please raise your right hand. Solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to offer in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the members of the jury. And then go ahead, counsel, with questions.
Hello, I am Dakota Weirs. My last name is spelled W-E-I-R-S.
Thank you.
Mr. Weirs,
Shea,
can you tell the jury? Oh, I apologize. May I proceed?
please.
Mr. Weirs, can you tell the jury why you're here today?
I'm here because I developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma after using Lush's product in my job for several years.
When were you first diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
I was first diagnosed a little over a year ago.
Can you tell us about your symptoms?
I feel frequent chills, I have rapid weight loss, and I feel fatigued constantly.
Did you see a doctor about your symptoms?
I did. After what felt like hundreds of hospital visits and tests, they finally diagnosed me with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Tell us about your life before you developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. How did you spend your time?
I spent my time doing so many things it's almost hard to count. I loved my school and I'd participate in any extracurriculars that I could find. I would volunteer whenever I could to help those that were less fortunate than me. But more than anything else, I loved to play the piano. Piano was really my passion in life. I picked it up from my great-grandfather.
Did you win any? Oh, I apologize. Continue.
I'm sorry, that is the end of my answer.
Did you win any awards or competitions for your music?
I did. I was featured in a number of recitals and a number of competitions, and I won a few, but my most proud achievement is earning a full ride scholarship to Juilliard.
Can you tell us what Juilliard is?
I might be a little biased here, but Juilliard is the best music conservatory in the world, with some amazing alumni like singer Nina Simone and composer John Williams.
What else did you do before you were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, with what little was left of my free time outside of volunteering and schoolwork, I would work at a small landscaping company.
And where were you working when you were diagnosed?
Haven Landscaping, a small locally owned landscaping business.
How long had you been working there?
Well, I had joined when I was 14, so I had been working there for about 4 years by the time I was diagnosed.
What were your job responsibilities like?
Well, since when I joined, I was 14, I wasn't quite old enough to work the big machinery, so I was mostly responsible for spreading seed and fertilizer.
Mr. Weirs, did you like your job?
I loved my job. I loved being able to work with my hands. I loved being able to work outdoors. I loved how my job would take me to new and interesting places in my city that I never even would have thought to give it a second look.
In their opening statement, Lush Fertilizer's attorney said that you did not follow the safety instructions on Lush Fertilizer's label. Is that true?
That's not true at all. The label only made some suggestions on how to use the product or what might happen if it got into your eyes. There wasn't anything about the fertilizer being dangerous.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the basis?
Best evidence. This witness is testifying to the contents of exhibits that have not yet been entered into evidence.
Ms. Mishevich?
Your Honor, I am about to enter Exhibit 1 into evidence, or request to enter Exhibit 1 into evidence. So this is laying the foundation to show that exhibit.
Thank you. I'm going to overrule the objection. I do think it's foundational, and I'm not sure that where the witness was going was to the contents in lieu of the best evidence. So your objection's well-founded, but overruled. Go ahead, Ms. Mishevich.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you were describing, Mr. Weirs, did you follow the safety instructions on Lush Fertilizer's label? Or what is your response to the opposing counsel's claim that you did not?
Well, the The label only made some suggestions on how to use the product or what might happen if it got into your eyes. There wasn't anything about how the fertilizer could be dangerous or what would happen if you didn't follow the suggestions on the label.
Your Honor, I'm showing opposing counsel Plaintiff Exhibit 1.
Okay.
Mr. Weirs, do you recognize what has previously been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's a Lush Fertilizer bottle label.
Is this a fair and accurate photo of the label for Lush fertilizer that you used during your time as a landscaper?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I would like to offer Plaintiff's Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection to 1?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to publish Plaintiff's Exhibit 1 to the jury.
Granted.
Thank you. Mr. Weirs, did you take any safety measures while using Lush fertilizer?
I didn't, but nothing was required by my job. My boss might suggest that we wear a mask when working with chemicals, but sometimes it was just too hot and it'd be almost impossible to breathe. We were also technically supposed to wear long sleeves and pants when working with fertilizers, but as far as I could tell, nobody even followed these instructions. So it really felt like a suggestion rather than a requirement.
Did you ever get in trouble for not covering your face or the rest of your body when working with the fertilizer?
No, I didn't. And as far as I could tell, nobody else did either. It really felt like a suggestion, and I never got the impression that anybody I worked with or my boss thought the fertilizer could actually be dangerous.
Did you have any reason to believe that using Lush fertilizer could cause harm to your health?
No.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading.
May I
Ms.
respond?
Mishevich, you may.
Your Honor, my question does not supply or suggest an answer. My witness is free to answer however he chooses.
Yes, the objection's overruled, although it's it wasn't a question that suggested the answer, so that's not leading. Go
Thank
ahead
you,
and
Your
answer,
Honor.
sir.
Could you please re-ask the question?
I can. Did you have any reason to believe that using Lush fertilizer could cause harm to your health?
No, there wasn't anything on the label about how it could cause harm to my health. There was only what would happen if it got into my eyes, so I wasn't really concerned about it.
Mr. Weirs, can you please read the first active ingredient on the label for the jury?
Drufo.
Did you know what Drufo was when you were using Lush fertilizer?
I had no idea. If I did, I would never even have gone near the stuff.
Mr. Weirs, does the Lush fertilizer label in Exhibit 1 use the word carcinogen anywhere in the ingredient list?
It doesn't say that anywhere.
Does the label tell you that you must wear a mask while using Lush fertilizer?
It only makes some suggestions. There wasn't any requirements.
Does it tell you what may happen if you don't wear a mask while using Lush fertilizer?
It doesn't say anything about that anywhere.
Does it tell you what may happen if you don't cover your arms and hands while using Lush fertilizer?
No, it doesn't say that anywhere.
Does this label tell you anything about what might happen to you if you use Lush fertilizer?
It just says it might irritate my eyes.
And Mr. Weirs, to reiterate, when did you first start exhibiting symptoms of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, I first started exhibiting symptoms a little over a year ago, right before I was set to leave for Juilliard.
And how has having non-Hodgkin's lymphoma impacted your life?
Well, it's been horrible. I have had rapid weight loss. I have had chills. I have frequent shortness of breath, but more than anything, it has taken away my ability to play the piano. If I sit at the piano bench for even 20 minutes, I get horribly bruised.
Did you end up accepting your scholarship to Juilliard?
No, I wasn't able to. I'm not even able to walk around the house most days, so I was allowed to defer, but I don't think my condition is going to get any better.
And is there a cure for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
I've been informed, unfortunately, there isn't. I'll have to live like this for the rest of my life.
Mr. Weirs, what do you want out of this lawsuit?
It's really hard to say what I want. More than anything, I wish I could just go back to school. I wish I could go back to my job. I wish I could go to Juilliard. But I know none of that is going to happen. I just want to hold Lush Fertilizer responsible for what they did to me and make sure that they can't do it to anybody else ever again.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Give the scoring judges a moment. All right, Attorney Hirsch.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Wheels, I'd like to begin by talking a bit about your employment at Haven Landscaping. Now, you started working for Haven when you were 14, correct?
Yes, when I started, I was only 14.
And you chose to work there because you liked working outside.
I chose to work there for numerous reasons, but yes, it was a great perk to be able to work with my hands.
And it was a great perk to be able to work with your hands, to work outside. And you did this work in the summer, correct?
Yes, most of the time that was when I worked.
And you worked at Haven for several summers, didn't you?
I worked there for about 4 years, that's correct.
Now, when you were working at Haven, one of the fertilizers you used was Lush fertilizer, wasn't it?
That is correct. It was one of the main fertilizers I used.
So yes, you did use Lush fertilizer while working at Haven?
Yes, that is correct.
I am now going to direct your attention to Lush fertilizer and specifically the Exhibit 1. Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to publish Exhibit 1, which has already been entered into evidence?
Permission is granted.
Now, Mr. Wheels, I'd like to talk with you about the user safety recommendations on this label. Now, you'd agree with me that this label says that, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin, correct?
Yes, under user safety recommendations, it does say that, but it's under recommendations, not any requirements.
But it does say that you should utilize protective clothing to cover all your exposed skin. Isn't that true?
Yes, under the recommendations, it does say that.
And you'd also agree with me that under the user safety recommendations, it says that use of a respirator or an N95 mask is recommended. Isn't that true?
It was recommended, but as I've stated, it was almost impossible to breathe with a mask on in the summers. And I didn't see anybody else wearing a mask, so I really had no example to follow.
But Mr. Wheels, you're aware that this product says that you should wear a respirator or an N95 mask. Isn't that true?
It does say that, but most of the time I was just trying to make some money for school. I wasn't actively examining these labels.
So just to clarify for the jury, that is a yes to my question, correct?
That is a yes.
And your boss also told you that whenever you were working with chemicals, you should cover your face. Isn't that true?
They did suggest that, yes.
Now, let's talk about what you did do. Now, when you were using Lush fertilizer, you didn't always wear protective clothing, did you?
I didn't, but I was 14 and nobody around me was wearing these protective clothing, so it really felt like a suggestion.
So, Mr. Wheels, in the 4 years you worked at Haven Landscaping, you didn't wear protective clothing when you worked with these fertilizers, did you?
Not specifically, no.
And you didn't wear a respirator when you worked with these fertilizers, isn't that true?
I didn't, but as I said, it was almost impossible to breathe and nobody around me was scolding me or even wearing these masks, so it really felt like a suggestion.
So just to clarify, you did not wear a respirator, correct?
I did not.
And you did not wear an N95 mask either?
I did not, but it was almost impossible to breathe, yes.
Now, thank you for sharing the exhibit, co-counsel. I would now like to speak with you a little bit about some of the other fertilizers you used. You used fertilizers other than Lush fertilizer, isn't that true?
I might have used some other fertilizers, that is correct, but Lush was the main fertilizer, certainly.
But you didn't instantly know that it was Lush fertilizer that you should suspect to cause your cancer, isn't that true?
I knew as soon as I saw a news story about how its product, Drufo, or its ingredient, Drufo, was rushed through development and possibly carcinogenic.
Mr. Wheels, I'm not asking about what you heard on the news. I'm asking about whether or not you used Lush fertilizer enough to know that it was must have been the cause of your cancer, and it sounds to me like you didn't. Isn't that true?
Objection, Your Honor. Question calls for speculation on the part of the.
Overruled.
Could you please re-ask that question? I'm not sure I fully understand it.
Mr. Wheels, you'd agree with me that you didn't work with Lush fertilizer enough that you believed you should immediately suspect it after you got cancer. Isn't that true?
I worked with it enough that once I saw these stories on the news that I did suspect it of causing my cancer, yes.
So that's a yes, you didn't work with it enough until you saw these news stories, correct?
I worked with it plenty.
All right, now, Mr. Wheels, you did use other fertilizers, isn't that true?
That is true, but I would also say that Lush fertilizer was the main fertilizer.
Yes, and so you use these other fertilizers, and you don't have the labels for these other fertilizers here in court today, do you?
I only thought to bring Lush's label as it is the company I am suing for causing my cancer.
But you did not bring these other labels to court today, isn't that correct?
I did not.
You did not bring a list of the other fertilizers you used, isn't that true?
Objection, Your Honor. This line of questioning falls outside the scope of the case.
Ms. Hirsch?
Your Honor, it is the defense's argument today that the plaintiff is misplacing the blame by placing the blame for Mr. Wheels' disease onto Lush fertilizer instead of any of the other companies and fertilizers that Mr. Wheels worked with. I am, with this line of questioning, I am bringing out testimony that supports that and supports the assertion that Mr. Wheels does not have enough evidence to claim that Lush fertilizer is the sole cause of his cancer.
Well, I certainly understand that part, but I think what Ms. Mishevich is saying is that it's kind of an unfair extrapolation. Is that fair, Ms. Mishevich?
That is true.
All right. What about that, Ms. Hirsch?
Your Honor, I would disagree. Your Honor, I would not see this as being an unfair extrapolation, as it is. I am not asking for testimony that is not contained in his statement. I am asking about whether or not there is a list of the fertilizers that was used in the case, in the exhibits today or in evidence today, whether or not he can provide one, which is a natural case problem, not an unfair extrapolation.
All right. I'm going to overrule the objection. I'll leave this up to further direct examination. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Wheels, you'd agree with me that you do not have a list of any of the other fertilizers you used here, correct?
I don't believe so, but I'm certain that most of these fertilizers did not contain Drufo. Yes.
But you don't have the labels to those in court today, do you?
I did not bring them because they are not the companies that I am suing now.
Okay, let's move on.
Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Shevich, is there redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Right. You may.
Mr. Weirs, how old were you when you first started working at Havens Landscaping?
I was only 14.
Did you have any awareness of what could happen to you if you used Lush fertilizer?
I had no idea. If I did, I would never even have gone near Lush fertilizer or Drufo in the first place.
Did the label say that any sort of precautionary measures were required when using the product, or did it simply recommend them?
It simply recommended them. Yeah.
Did Lush Fertilizer's label communicate in any way that the product could affect your health?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Your Honor, I have not previously asked this question.
You know, I feel like there might be a best evidence issue, but certainly not asked and answered. So that objection's overruled.
Mr. Weirs, did Lush Fertilizer's label communicate in any way that the product could harm your health?
It didn't communicate that in any way. It only said what might happen if it got into your eyes.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. May this witness be excused. All right, let's give our scoring judges a moment and we'll call the next witness, please.
Your Honor, we would like to call the plaintiff's second witness, Mr. Carson Durst, to the stand.
All right.
May I proceed?
You may, hang on just a moment. Please raise your right hand and repeat after, and you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. All right, good. I'm not sure that I've heard you. Make sure
I do, sorry.
Oh, good, good. I wasn't sure. Yes, thank you. Please introduce yourself to the scoring panelists.
My name is Carson Durst, spelled D-U-R-S-T.
Thank you.
May I proceed?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Why are you here today, Mr. Durst?
I'm here today because I believe that I can give my opinion that Drupo is in fact carcinogenic and that Lush Fertilizer knew about it.
What is your educational background?
I graduated from Arizona State University with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
Where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed as the head of the research and development team at Terra's Greenery.
Can you tell me about your occupation history before Terra's Greenery?
So before working at Terra's Greenery, I worked at Lush Fertilizer for 4 years.
And how did you find that job?
So my job at Lush Fertilizer started as an internship and then 3 months into my internship, I actually got promoted to a full-time product development engineer.
Did you meet the qualifications for your promotion?
I absolutely met the qualifications for my promotion. I was working at a higher level of work quality than my fellow colleagues, and that's why I got the promotion.
What were your responsibilities as a product development engineer at Lush Fertilizer?
We worked on the testing and development of new fertilizers.
And were you required to apply your degree in chemical engineering in your work on the research and development team at Lush Fertilizer?
Absolutely. Without my degree, I wouldn't have been able to do my job properly.
Your Honor, we would now like to offer Mr. Durst as an expert in agricultural chemical testing.
Your Honor.
Yes, any voir dire or objection, Mr. Squirrel?
Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Durst wasn't offered as an expert before the trial, meaning the defense had no idea that he was going to be offered as an expert as he was not marked as an expert witness.
So there's no endorsement?
No, there's not.
Is there a report?
Sorry, Your Honor?
Is there an expert report?
I wouldn't say there's an expert report, but within the mock trial rules, Mr. Durst was not marked as an expert.
Okay, that's really what it boils down to. Ms. McGowan?
Your Honor, I'd like to lay further foundation as to why we believe Mr. Durst should be permitted as an expert in his field.
Well, but what Mr. Squirrel, I believe, is saying is that we can't permit, he was never endorsed as an expert. So the issue at the moment is not whether or not he's qualified to provide expert opinions, is that he cannot be an expert because according to the tournament rules, the other side was unaware that he was going to be so endorsed.
Yes, Your Honor. We can move on without Mr. Durst being permitted as an expert.
Okay, good. So, all right. So to the extent that that's an objection that Mr. Squirrel makes, that objection is sustained.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. McGowan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, were you able to find any studies that tested whether the chemical compound had any adverse effects on humans?
No, I found no studies if there are any adverse effects on humans from Truffaut, but that's because it's unethical to test chemicals on humans like this.
And what did you do with the findings that Truffaut may be carcinogenic in rats?
Okay, so I put the research I found from my study into my lab notebook, and the lab notebook is typically compiled with all the members of the research and development team and put together into a bigger report and then sent up to senior management.
Do you know what Lush Fertilizer did with your findings?
No, I don't.
Permission to show Exhibit 4 on the screen for your honor, opposing counsel, and the witness to refer to.
All right, so this would be something we would do outside of the presence of our scoring panelists or jurors? Is that what you're saying, Ms. McGowan?
No, Your Honor. We would just like to show the exhibit on the screen for everybody to refer to so they don't have to look at their own.
Okay, good. We can do that. I certainly understand what you're doing. Otherwise, this is not something a witness could see until it was presented into evidence, until it was offered and admitted. But let's go. Our scoring panelists will shield their eyes, I guess, and go ahead and publish that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Durst, do you recognize this document?
Yes, this is an email that was sent to us ordering a second study on if Truffaut is specifically carcinogenic in humans.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of this email?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, permission to publish Exhibit 4 and admit it into evidence.
All right, let's, is there an objection to Exhibit 4?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Squirrel, go ahead.
Yes, the defense has a genuine question about the authenticity of this email due to the fact that one of our witnesses will testify that this email was never in our email servers, which we turned over to the plaintiff's lawyer. The plaintiff's lawyer were unable to find this email. And so therefore, under Rule 1003, because there is a genuine question about this authenticity, we ask that it not be omitted.
Ms. McGowan?
Your Honor, this email was sent from an upper level management employee at Lush Fertilizer. And in being so, we would like to admit it into evidence because Mr. Durst did in fact receive this email, whether or not the other recipients did.
All right, I don't find that Rule 1003 applies. That's really an issue of the admission of duplicates. I'm not sure that an adequate foundation was laid for this exhibit, but I'm going to let it in. The argument, Mr. Squirrel, your argument was well taken, but I'm going to overrule the objection and let it in.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, who is Jerry Langley?
Jerry Langley is the product manager of our study of whether Truffaut was carcinogenic in humans.
Who was this email sent to?
This email was sent to the members of the research and development team at Lush Fertilizer, along with its CEO, Blake Doncourt.
I'd like to focus on the first sentence of the second paragraph. Can you please read this aloud for the jury?
Yes. Following our lab's June Truffaut study, concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples produced during a period early in the year.
Again, Mr. Durst, who is this email addressed to?
The members of the research and development team and Blake Doncourt.
Who is Blake Doncourt?
Blake Doncourt is in fact the CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
Is he on the research and development team?
He is not.
Mr. Durst, did Ms. Langley explain why she wanted a new study?
Ms. Langley just explained that she wanted a new study to confirm results from the previous study that we took.
Did you participate in the second study that was done?
I did participate in the second study, yes.
What did the team's research find?
So it was my and many of my colleagues' opinions that Truffaut was in fact carcinogenic. And when we brought this up at a research meeting, we even discussed that Truffaut had a connection to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And how did your supervisor, Jerry Langley, respond?
Jerry just said that we'd keep the information in the walls until the final report of our study was published.
Did the official report published by the company mention anything about the potential connection to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
The connection between non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and Drufo was not mentioned once in the entire final report.
What did the official report say about the research and development team's findings?
That it was an accurate representation of all of our research.
So did the official report accurately summarize your team's research?
No, there was some of the research we put in that was left out of the final report.
Mr. Durst, why did you leave Lush Fertilizer?
So I left Lush Fertilizer because after I expressed my concerns about Drufo being carcinogenic and the final report being published saying that Drufo was not carcinogenic, my work performance reviews suddenly started to drop.
So how did your job at Lush Fertilizer officially end?
I was forced out of the company.
Mr. Durst, is your testimony today motivated by the circumstances under which you were forced out of Lush Fertilizer?
No, it is not.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. McGowan, thank you. Give our judges a moment. Mr. Squirrel.
Yes, I'm prepared for cross-examination.
Anytime you're ready.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Durst. First, I'd like to talk to you about your former job at Lush Fertilizer. It's true that you were a full-time product development engineer, correct?
That is correct.
It's true that nearing the end of your time at Lush Fertilizer, the quality of your work was criticized, was it not?
So yes, the quality of my work was criticized at the end of my career at Lush Fertilizer, but that it was mainly criticized after I expressed my concerns about Drufo being carcinogenic.
Mr. Durst, I'd also like to instruct you to answer with yes or no. And so, Ms. Durst, I would take that as a no, as a yes. You fall at the end of your time at Lush Fertilizer, the quality of your work was criticized, correct?
Yes, but like I said, only following when I expressed my concerns.
Thank you. And you were even forced to sign a performance improvement plan, correct?
I was, yes.
And now I'm going to move on to your current job at Terrace Greenery. It's true that you currently work for Terrace Greenery, do you not?
I do in fact work at Terrace Greenery, yes.
And it's true that Terrace Greenery is a rival to Lush Fertilizer, is it not?
Terrace Greenery is in fact a rival to Lush Fertilizer.
They even have a rival product to Lush Fertilizer, correct?
They do, that is correct.
Now, moving on to this report, which supposedly links Drufo to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, it's true that this report was unable to conclude whether or not Drufo is linked to any long-term health effects in humans, correct?
That is correct, but the final report published by Lush Fertilizer definitely had some information missing from it.
But you didn't have access to all the information analyzed, did you?
I did not, no.
And this report only recommended baking Drufo, correct?
That is correct.
In fact, this report was actually concluded 18 years ago in 2003, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And in the past 18 years, despite being concerned about possible carcinogenic effects, you haven't come forward to the public once, have you?
That's not necessarily in my witness statement. So if you want me to, I can come up with an answer.
Exactly, it's not in your witness statement. And isn't it true that when you signed your witness statement, you swore to include all relevant information, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
It's also true that you knew that you had to update this witness statement if anything relevant occurred to you, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So it's also true that in your witness statement, you didn't mention once having come forward to the public about these possible carcinogenic effects.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. This is outside the scope of the case problem.
Mr. Squirrel.
Your Honor, the fact that it is not included within the case is a part of the case problem. It allows me to cross on this because of the fact he didn't include this relevant information. It implies it never happened, allowing me to cross, meaning it is a part.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection, but that means that the door is open. And so if Ms. McGowan wants to revisit this issue on redirect, she can do that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Durst, I would like to talk to you about your relationship to the Doncourt family now. It's true that Mr. Doncourt and the whole Doncourt family was like the family you never had, correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Doncourt especially has been a long-term mentor and close family friend, has he not?
Yes, Blake Doncourt was.
Yet, when you went to complain to Mr. Doncourt about your declining job performance, he told you to, quote, grow up and do your job?
Yes, that's what Blake said.
And when you went to complain to Mr. Doncourt about your supervisor, Jerry Langley, he told you they were lucky to even have a job, correct?
Yes, that's what Blake said, but my job was granted to me because I worked at a higher level than everyone else.
I understand that, Mr. Durst. And once again, my questions are yes or no questions. Thank you. And after this, you were seething, were you not?
I was.
And after that, you applied to Tara's Greenery, a factor of which was to take revenge on Blake, was it not?
Yes, that was a factor, but Tara's Greenery was also in the fertilizer market, and fertilizer is what I knew as my job.
So that's a yes. Taking revenge on Blake was a factor.
Yes, but just that, a factor.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay. One moment for the judges, and then we will have redirect. Ms. McGowan?
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Mr. Durst, again, why did you choose to leave Lush Fertilizer?
So I left Lush Fertilizer because right after I expressed my concerns about Drufo being carcinogenic, my work performance reviews did in fact start to suddenly drop.
And why do you believe your performance was considered subpar?
I believe my performance was considered subpar because I expressed my concerns about Drufo, being carcinogenic.
What kind of tests did you perform at Lush Fertilizer?
Tests on the safety of their fertilizer and the chemicals inside of it.
And would Lush publish any of the information you researched in its final report?
So the relevant information that me and many of my colleagues found on Drufo being carcinogenic was in fact not published in the final report.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. May this witness be excused? All right, thank you. Next witness, please.
Plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
All right, hang on just a moment. All right, Mr. O'Connor. Dr. Rogers.
Hello.
Just a moment, please. You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, sir. Please introduce yourself to the members, to the scoring judges.
My name is Dr. Casey Rogers, spelled Casey-Rogers.
Counsel.
May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers.
Good afternoon.
I would ask you to state your name, but you just did. So we will move on to the next question. What is your occupation, Dr. Rogers?
I'm currently employed as a professor in the Agriculture and Entomology Department at the University of California at Berkeley.
Can you briefly describe your educational background?
Yes, I received my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University and my PhD in Agriculture and Entomology from the
Do
University
me a favor, if you wouldn't mind, slow down a little bit. Repeat that answer. You got a Bachelor in Science from CSU in what?
Of course, a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University, and then my PhD in Agriculture and Entomology from the University of California at Berkeley.
Thank you. Next question, please.
And are you currently teaching any courses at UC Berkeley?
Yes, I teach 3 classes right now. A 101 class called Intro to Horticulture Etymology, a 201 class called Food Crops, which focuses on the history and development of the primary crops that feed the United States, and an advanced 301 class called Herbicide Selectivity and Action, which focuses on the biochemical effects of pesticides on our crops.
And have you focused your research on any particular subject?
Yes, at the university, I conduct research in the Environmental Chemistry and Toxicology Laboratory, where I focus on pesticide mode of action and metabolism by the human body. And I have also been studying the potentially harmful effects prolonged exposure to chemicals has on the body for many years. And more recently, the majority of that research has focused on the harmful effects of DRUFO.
Permission to share my screen to present Exhibit 6 and 7 to the opposing counsel, the witness, and you, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Rogers, do you recognize Exhibit 6?
Yes, Exhibit 6 is a copy of my CV.
And do you recognize Exhibit 7?
Yes, Exhibit 7 is a list of my research publications over the years.
Dr. Rogers, does your CV accurately set forth your educational and professional work background?
Yes.
Does Exhibit 7 accurately and completely list your published work?
In its entirety, yes.
Your Honor, we'd like to offer Exhibit 6 and 7 into evidence.
Is there any objection to first to Exhibit 6?
The defense has no objection to Exhibit 6, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. 6 will be admitted. Exhibit 7?
No objection to Exhibit 7 either, Your Honor.
All right, 6 and 7 are admitted. Go ahead, Mr. O'Connor.
Permission to publish to the jury.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Dr. Rogers, have you published any articles about DRUFO?
I have. As you can see in Exhibit 7, in 2017, I published an article in Biotechnology Information titled DRUFO Toxicity and Carcinogenity, a review of the scientific basis of the European Union assessment. And more recently, in 2019, The Environmentalist published my article titled The Evidence of Human Exposure to DRUFO, a review.
At this time, we would like to offer Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in the field of agricultural pesticides, including the human metabolism of pesticides.
So you're offering as an expert in agricultural pesticides, including human, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Including the human metabolism of pesticides.
Sure. Mr. Bloom?
Voir dire, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers.
Good afternoon.
You have a PhD in agriculture and entomology, correct?
That is correct.
However, you have no medical degree?
I do not have a medical degree, no.
Nor do you have any medical background?
I do not have a background in I do not have a background in medical science, but I have been involved in many other processes.
So no, you do not have any background in medical science.
That is correct.
You don't have a background in the field of oncology either, do you?
In oncology, no.
Moving on, I'd like to discuss a bit about the plaintiff. Now, you have read the plaintiff's medical files. However, you have not met with the plaintiff, have you, Dakota Weirs?
I have met with the plaintiff, yes.
You have met with the plaintiff?
I have.
So does your testimony in court today that you have met with the plaintiff outside of this litigation?
One more time, I apologize.
Have you met with the plaintiff outside of this litigation?
Outside of this litigation, yes.
Objection, question was outside the scope of the case. Of the voir dire, my bad.
I'm not really sure, Mr. Bloom, where you're going with this, because it seems to me that the voir dire speaks to whether or not this doctor is an expert in agricultural pesticides, including the human metabolism of pesticides. So how does this question go to, how do these questions go to that?
Your Honor, if I may make an offer of proof, we will not be objecting to what Dr. Rogers is being entered in. However, we would like to specifically limit him to certain elements.
All right. I'll let Mr. Okan speak to that briefly and then I can rule.
Yes, Your Honor. Even though Dr. Rogers does not have a medical license, we've established that through his background and educational training that he is able to opine on how agricultural chemicals affect the human body. Therefore, I do believe he is qualified to talk and share out scientific causation opinions, not medical causation opinions.
All right, and do you plan on obtaining an opinion with respect to your client specifically?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So then I'll let Mr. Bloom proceed with his voir dire on this topic.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mhm.
I'll move on to the next question for time's sake. Dr. Rogers, have you met with the plaintiff's doctors?
I've not with other doctors in the
Outside objection, Your Honor. This is outside of the scope of the voir dire.
It's getting close, but I'll let it go and we'll see the next question.
Your Honor, I would now like to make my objection to this witness. We do not object to this witness being entered in agriculture or the human metabolism. However, we do want to limit any medical testimony, as Dr. Rogers is not a medical doctor, has no background in the field of oncology. He has also not spoken with the actual doctors of this plaintiff and therefore should not be able to testify to the cause of any of the plaintiff's actual diseases as well.
All right. The objection, there's really no objection to the witness. So the witness will be permitted to testify as an expert on agricultural pesticides, including the human metabolism of pesticides. With respect to any potential testimony about oncological issues, we'll let that be, we won't rule on that until such a question is asked. So that's a little bit preliminary, is I guess what I'm saying.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. All right, go ahead, Mr. Okan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, are you being paid for your work on this case?
Yes, I have received nominal compensation on an hourly basis for my time in court today and for the time I spent reviewing records and pertinent scientific literature to reach my opinions in this case.
And has this compensation influenced your opinions in any way?
Absolutely not. I'm here to give the jury my opinions based solely on my scientific research and my education, training, and experience, nothing else. I'm only being compensated for time I'm taking away from my academic pursuits, nothing more.
I would now like to discuss your research on Drufo. Dr. Rogers, why did you decide to research the effects of Drufo?
So Drufo first caught my attention when it came to the market because I believed it was rushed without sufficient studies on its safety to humans because, I mean, the scientific community already knew that Drufo was carcinogenic in rats. So for many years after Drufo was released on the market, I heard reports on the potentially negative effects of the substance, and I wanted to study the chemical to determine any side effects or negative effects. So I thought it was important to conduct my own study to see if there were any adverse health effects in persons who were exposed to Drufo over long periods of time.
And how did you conduct your study?
So my study included a control group of people who had never been exposed to Drufo, a group of people who use products containing Drufo on occasion, and a group of people who are exposed to Drufo on a regular, almost daily basis, such as professional farmers and gardeners.
And what did the study find?
Specifically, the study found that those with prolonged exposure were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer as those without exposure, suggesting a strong correlation between exposure to Drufo and cancer.
Was there any specific type of cancer related to this experiment?
The majority of those diagnosed with cancer were diagnosed with endocrine and exocrine-based varieties, the latter of which includes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Dr. Rogers, does this mean that Mr. Weirs is not the first person to develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma due to exposure to Drufo?
That is correct.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection, Mr. Bloom?
Your Honor, the attorney is testifying.
So I guess what that would be is a leading objection, Mr. Okan.
Your Honor, if I may respond.
You may.
Your Honor, this does not imply a yes or no answer. My witness is free to answer however he wishes.
Your Honor, if I may respond, I was not objecting to leading. The opposing counsel in his question implied that the cause of the plaintiff's cancer was in fact Drufo, which is what the jury is here to decide.
Okay, all right. So that's a different objection. That's really an
Yes, Your Honor.
objection to assuming facts not in evidence. And I know we're running out of time. Mr. Okan, you want to speak to that briefly?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the objection sustained. Go ahead and you can re-ask, Mr. Okan.
Re-ask?
You can go ahead and inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, do you have an opinion on whether exposure to Drufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in humans generally?
My opinion, to a high degree of scientific probability, that exposure to Drufo can generally cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
No further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Our judges had a chance. All right. Mr. Bloom?
Yes, Your Honor. Hello again, Dr. Rogers. I'd like to begin by discussing your study. Now, this study of yours had three groups, pardon me, correct?
That is correct. A control group of people who never had exposure, a group of people who had exposure on occasion, and a group of people who had exposure on a daily basis.
Yes, I'd like to begin by talking about this third group. Now, this third group contained mostly farmers and gardeners, correct?
That is true.
Within this group, you did not control for any other chemicals used by this group besides Drufo, did you?
I did not account for other chemicals besides Drufo, but Drufo was the main fertilizer being utilized by these people.
So that is a no?
That is a no.
In this group, you also did not control for any medications any members of this group may be taking?
I was not aware of any medications that would be caused that would interfere with the study, and I was simply observing their case.
So no, you did not control for this?
No, I did not.
You didn't control for any environmental factors outside of Drufo, did you?
That is true. But Drufo was the main cause.
Thank you. Now, this study of yours has not been peer-reviewed, has it?
The study was never peer-reviewed, no.
The study was never replicated?
It was not replicated.
And your study has not been published, has it?
It has not been published. No, it has not.
Moving on, I'd like to talk about some recommendations you made to mitigate the possible effects of Drufo.
Sure.
You recommended that users of Drufo should wear long sleeves, correct?
I did make that recommendation.
And you also recommended, most importantly, that those using Drufo should wear a medical grade mask.
I wouldn't say most importantly, but I did make that recommendation, yes.
You wouldn't say most importantly.
The mask was important, yes.
Most important, in fact.
One more time, I apologize.
The mask was most important for those using Drufo, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Now, yes, thank you. Now, to your knowledge, Dakota Weirs did not wear long sleeves when working with Drufo.
When Dakota was testifying, he did state that he did not wear long pants, long sleeves, or wear that medical grade mask.
Yes, he did not wear that medical grade mask, did he?
He did not, no.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wilkin? Is a redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
I tell you what, let's, timers, wait just a moment. Let's give our judges just a second or two. All right, Mr. Okan.
Uh, Before I begin, may I ask how much time I have left?
I have 3 minutes and 34 seconds on my end.
Could you repeat that, please?
3:34.
Yes, 3:34.
I have 4:46.
Wow, so we're 1 minute off. What are the scores doing during objections?
Pausing the time.
Okay,
Yeah, the time is paused at the beginning of the objection and resumes upon the next question.
all right. So, guys, I don't really know what else to do. We're gonna say there's 4 minutes left. 4 minutes and 15 seconds left.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Starting now. Mr. Rogers,
May I proceed?
you may.
Dr. Rogers, you were asked a number of questions in your cross-examination about recommendations on wearing protective clothing. Do you remember these questions?
I do.
When were these recommendations made?
These recommendations were made a year before Dakota had left his fertilization company, meaning Dakota could not have had proper time to heed my warning as a doctor.
No further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And this witness will be excused.
Thank
Thank you
you,
for
Your
your
Honor.
testimony, doctor. Board judges, another brief moment. Next witness, please.
Apologies. Your Honor, the defense calls Blake Doncourt to the stand.
Okay. All right, so that's the last, I just want to make sure that the plaintiff's done presenting their case.
My apologies, Your Honor. The plaintiff rests.
Plaintiff rests. All right, so we're not doing motions, I assume. Ms. Hirsch.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good afternoon. My name is Blake Doncourt.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Doncourt?
I'm the CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
And what does that job entail?
Well, being the CEO entails many things, but most importantly to me, it means putting out products that I know will be safe in our consumers' hands and guiding the company along with its mission.
And what is your company's mission?
At Lush, we want to create an environment that's as beautiful as it is healthy with our products. And we show that through our dedication to creating such products.
So, what progress have you made in achieving this?
Well, thanks to our success, we're able to donate 10% of our annual profits to various charities working to reduce the global nitrogen footprint. And we've even started our own charity working to reduce pollution in the most polluted parts of the ocean.
And what's been the key to your success?
It's all thanks to our flagship product, Lush Fertilizer.
Could you tell us a bit more about Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer is a revolutionary product. It has a certain bonding agent, Drufo, which makes it so unique and effective.
Now, we'll get back to Lush Fertilizer in a moment, but for now, I'd like to turn your attention to why you're here in court today. Mr. Doncourt, why are you here in court today?
Mr. Weers has falsely claimed that the bonding agent Drufo in Lush Fertilizer is carcinogenic.
And is that true?
Absolutely not.
So, could you tell us a bit more about this bonding agent of yours, Drufo?
Drufo is so special because it can bond to both the nutrients in the fertilizer and the plant itself with more efficiency than your average product, which means that it doesn't have to be sprayed as much, being more cost efficient. And that means that less pollutants are let off into the environment after it's sprayed, which is very healthy for the environment overall.
And how did you develop Drufo?
When we say our mission is to create products that will help us with our goal of creating a beautiful and healthy environment, we mean it. And so we were thinking of ways we could do that. And that's how we came up with Drufo.
And how did you test Drufo's safety?
Naturally, right away after we had the product, we went straight to extensive testing.
And what were the
My apologies. I wanted to say that both our research and development teams, as well as the EPA, put in years of testing before the product was released.
and what were the results of these tests?
Both parties had absolutely conclusive evidence that Drufo was safe.
So are you aware of any studies indicating that Drufo might be carcinogenic?
I have yet to see any valid scientific studies which prove that there's any even evidence of Drufo being dangerous.
I'd now like to turn your attention to Carlson Durst, the former employee of yours. Did you hear Mr. Durst's testimony today?
Yes, I did.
And what was Mr. Durst's role at your company?
Mr. Durst was a member of our research and development team.
And what did this job entail?
His job was to research the products that we gave him, such as Drufo, and if there were any risks or dangers that he noticed, he would have to report them higher up so that we could more thoroughly investigate what the issue could be.
And did Mr. Durst report finding anything of this nature when he worked for you regarding Drufo?
No, Mr. Durst never made any reports of anything that could be dangerous about Drufo until after he was fired from Lush and started working for our greatest competitor, Terra Greenery.
I'd now like to turn your attention to something else that Mr. Durst mentioned, and that is the supposed email, which is Exhibit 4. Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to publish Exhibit 4, which has already been admitted.
Go ahead, please.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, what is Exhibit 4?
Exhibit 4 is a clearly manufactured email regarding the possible concerns of Drufo.
And have you ever seen Exhibit 4 before?
No, I never received this email. I've only seen it in this litigation.
Now, you said that it was clearly manufactured. Why do you say that?
Well, I say that for two main reasons. The first, obviously, being that I never received this email. And second is that we handed over our entire email system to the plaintiff's lawyers so that they could search through and find any emails like this. And their searches resulted with nothing like this email.
I'd now like to turn your attention away from Exhibit 4 and onto one other thing that Ms. Durst mentioned, which is the baking process. Thank you for screen sharing the exhibit, co-counsel. Now, what exactly does it mean to bake fertilizer?
It's essentially just as it sounds. You'll heat the fertilizer up to extremely high temperatures in an oven or something similar. And what this does is it very minimally reduces the possibility of any risks being posed by the fertilizer.
So do you bake your products?
No, we don't.
Why not?
The risk reduction that you actually see from this process of baking the fertilizer has such a microscopic actual reduction that there's no material difference at the end of the day if you bake it. It'll be safe either way.
Mr. Doncourt, how can you be so sure of that?
We did the testing. We did years of testing with our own teams as well as the EPA before we even considered putting the product out, where it's been on the shelves for the past 18 years without any problems.
Now, finally, Mr. Doncourt, are you aware that your company is being accused of negligence today?
Yes, I am.
And are those accusations true?
I can guarantee you that they aren't. I feel horrible for Mr. Weirs and everything that he has to go through with this disease. Honestly, I don't blame him for being upset and wanting to find answers about why this is happening to him. But by accusing Lush, he's misplacing the blame.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
All right. Ms. Hirsch. Give the judges a moment. Ms. McGowan,
May I proceed?
you may.
Mr. Doncourt, you're the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer, Inc., correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you have been the CEO of Lush Fertilizer since 2000?
Yes.
So you were the CEO in December of 2003, right?
Yes.
Mr. Doncourt, I wrote it down to make sure I got it right, but you testified in court today that both parties, the research and development team, as well as the EPA, had conclusive results that Drufo is safe, as well as you have never seen studies showing that Drufo is dangerous. Is this correct?
I have never seen any valid studies that Drufo could be dangerous. Yes.
But isn't it true that your own research and development team at Lush Fertilizer raised concerns about Drufo being carcinogenic?
No, I never received any emails or reports that Drufo could be dangerous. The only reports that I received were the exact opposite. I only heard results that Drufo would be safe.
Your Honor, permission to show the witness what has previously been marked as Exhibit 4 on the screen.
Granted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, Jerry Langley was a Drufo product manager in September of 2003, right?
Yes.
And is this your name shown in the line titled 2?
Yes, it is.
Ms. Langley writes in the first paragraph in the first sentence that there has been not established any process expectations related to periodic verification of in-house research and development test results before the company considers certain findings conclusive. Did I read this correctly?
Yes, you did.
She also writes in the second sentence of the second paragraph, we are reinitiating the study in the coming weeks with fresh product samples. Did I read this correctly?
Yes.
Were you aware of concerns regarding generalized findings of potentially carcinogenic qualities identified in Drufo samples produced?
As I said, I was only ever made aware of studies that proved Drufo's safety, and this email, I never received it. This is clearly manufactured.
Even though your name is listed in the recipients of this email, you're saying that you've never seen it?
Manufacturing or faking an email like this would be quite easy to do. All you'd have to do is write my name in that line and it would appear as if it was sent to me. But I never received this email, nor have I ever seen it before this litigation.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. And so this email that you've never seen was sent in September of 2003, right?
That is what it says on the exhibit, yes.
And this was almost 2 decades ago?
Yes.
Which was 12 years before Dakota Weir started using your product, right?
I believe so.
I'd like to move on to talk to you about Lush Fertilizer's decision not to bake any of its products. You'd agree that baking the fertilizer removes any risk that it is carcinogenic, correct?
While this risk reduction is nearly microscopic and there's no material difference, yes, that's correct.
So although baking removes any risk that your fertilizer is carcinogenic, you decided not to bake any of Lush Fertilizer's products, right?
We had already come to the conclusion that Drufo is safe. Why would you try and fix something that isn't broken?
Besides it not being necessary to bake your product, isn't it true that you also chose not to bake your product as a cost-saving measure?
The cost played no role in whether or not we would bake the product. It was quite expensive, but the reason we don't bake our products is because there's no material difference in the safety.
Your Honor, permission to show Exhibit 8 on the screen for yourself, the witness, and the opposing counsel to refer to.
Exhibit 8.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Let's see the status. So you're just going to show the witness Exhibit 8? Is that my understanding?
Yes,
Okay,
Your
good.
Honor.
All right. All right, this will be seen outside of the viewing of the jury. And what's your
Yes, Your
question?
Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Doncourt, do you recognize this document as Lush Fertilizer's anticipated profits from 2004 to 2014?
Yes,
And you created this document in your role as CEO, right?
that's correct.
Is Exhibit 8 a fair and accurate version of Lush Fertilizer's anticipated profits from 2004 to 2014?
Yes, I believe so.
Your Honor, I would like to offer to move Exhibit 8 into evidence.
All right. Any objection or voir dire?
No objection over there, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 8 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor, and as well permission to publish to the jury.
Granted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, you created this table to determine what the cost would be of baking Lush Fertilizers products, correct?
Yes.
And the third column shows Lush Fertilizers' net profits after deducting the cost of baking.
Yes.
By the definition of net profits, this means you're deducting the cost of doing business, including expenses and salaries, and this is everything left over, right?
Yes.
Isn't it true then that according to your own projections, Lush Fertilizers still would have been profitable every year, even if it baked its fertilizers?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound question.
Ms. McGowan?
Your Honor, I only asked the witness one question.
I agree. The objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, isn't it true then that according to your own projections, Lush Fertilizers still would have been profitable every year, even after baking its fertilizers?
Yes, that's correct.
In fact, you estimated that Lush Fertilizer would have made over $1 million in profits every year from 2004 to 2014, even if it baked its fertilizer.
Yes.
But this wasn't enough profit for you?
As I said, it's not about the money. It's about the fact that Drufo has already proven over years of extensive testing to be safe and ready to be in our consumers' hands. I'm still running a business here, and baking the products without any results in material difference just wouldn't have made sense.
Mr. Doncourt, that wasn't my question. A yes or no will suffice. Was this enough profit for you?
I suppose so.
Mr. Doncourt, you thought that removing any risk that your fertilizer was carcinogenic was simply overkill, right?
I believe it was overkill that you would try to fix something that is already safe, but that's what I said, yes.
But you never published these financial findings to the public, did you?
No businesses do. It would give our
Mr.
competitors.
Mr. Doncourt, I'm asking about your company. Did your company publish your financial findings to the public?
No, we do not.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Hirsch?
A brief redirect, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
May I have a brief redirect, Your Honor?
You may, of course.
Mr. Doncourt, you were just asked a fair amount of questions on cross regarding your motives not to bake your product. Could you just clarify what those were for the jury?
Yes, the money that we've gained from not baking the product is not the reason we don't bake the product. We don't bake the product because we already put the hard work into hours of testing to prove that Drufo would already be safe. The money played no role in our decision to bake the product or not bake the product. If we had known that Drufo could possibly be dangerous, or I had ever seen any studies that proved that it could pose risks, I wouldn't have put it out.
And so just to clarify, are you aware of any chance that Drufo might pose a risk?
As I said, I've still not seen any scientifically valid studies that Drufo could pose any risks. The only studies I've seen are by the EPA and our research and development team, which were conducted under proper testing conditions. And those tests all showed signs that Drufo was not dangerous at all and that it would be safe.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
All right, thank you. Witness is excused.
Thank you.
We'll give our judges a few more moments. Does anybody need a time check? All right. Next witness for the defense, please.
The defense calls Skylar Weirs.
All right. Ms. Weirs, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Outstanding. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Skylar Weirs.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Weirs, Ms. Weirs, what is your current profession?
I'm a scientific investigative journalist.
What do you do in your job as a scientific investigative journalist?
I specialize in modern agricultural technology, and I spend my time reading and researching for a scientific magazine.
Please tell the jury about the scientific magazine you work for.
I work for The Rationalist, which is owned by the nonprofit organization, the Rationalist Society, and we are dedicated to encouraging our readers to look into the science and not believe in misinformation.
What are your qualifications to testify here today?
I have spent almost a year reading and researching about modern agricultural technology. I've also gained information from the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, also known as the USDA and the NASDA. I have written several articles in the past on modern agricultural technology for The Rationalist.
Tell the jury about your educational background.
While it's true that I didn't go to college, I have spent time extensively studying modern agricultural technology.
And to clarify for the court, what is modern agricultural technology?
Modern agricultural technology, or you can call it modern agritech for short, is the use of technology in agriculture to increase yield, profitability, and efficiency.
And you've said that you've written articles about modern agricultural technology, or modern agritech, as you call it. Can you tell the jury more about these articles?
I read publications by agritech companies, and then I tracked down and reviewed the data involved, and then I used those for my articles.
And Ms. Weirs, while you're researching this, do you figure out what DRUFO is?
Yes, I have studied DRUFO.
What are your experiences with DRUFO?
I have studied DRUFO extensively for an article that I wrote about DRUFO in the past in my series of articles for modern agritech.
While you're researching your article, did you research the health effects of DRUFO and other modern agricultural technologies upon the human body?
Because my article was researching the supposed link between DRUFO and non-Hodgkin's disease, yes, I did study the health effects of DRUFO.
Your Honor, we offer Ms. Weirs as an expert witness in the field of modern agricultural technology with an emphasis in fertilizer under Rule 702.
Okay. All right. Any objection or voir dire on the offer under as an expert in modern agricultural technology emphasizing fertilizer?
Yes, Your Honor. Can I request permission for a brief voir dire?
Of course.
May I proceed?
You may.
Ms. Weirs, you work as a journalist, true?
Yes, that is correct.
So you don't hold any scientific degree?
No, I do not.
Do you have any scientific training?
Well, I've done extensive studying on modern agricultural technology. No, I do not have any scientific training.
You don't have any experience as a scientist?
No, I do not.
So you're relying on the articles that you read as a journalist for your opinions today, true?
Can you repeat the question?
You are relying on the articles that you read as a journalist for your opinions today, true?
Yes, I read articles by agritech companies and then I tracked down the studies involved with them for my articles, yes.
So you are actually relying on other people's expertise for your opinions rather than your own research? Your Honor, we would like to renew the arguments raised in our motion in limine briefing to preclude Ms. Weirs' expert testimony. While we have no objection to Ms. Weirs talking about the agritech industry in general, we do object to her providing any opinions on the science behind how DRUFO works. The defendant has not shown that Ms. Weirs is qualified by skill, experience, training, or education to provide scientific opinions, and we do not believe the knowledge acquired by Ms. Weirs is the knowledge contemplated by Rule 702, as there is no way to verify the reliability of that research.
Squirrel, so you've offered the witness as an expert on modern agricultural technology with an emphasis on fertilizer, and the objection is primarily to her testifying about the science of how Drufo works. So go ahead from there.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Sweers has extensive knowledge in Drufo. That she wrote an entire article about Drufo and she has gained knowledge from it. Rule 702 requires that an expert witness have at least one of the 5 following traits: knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. Ms. Weirs has knowledge about Drufo. She has spent nearly a year reading and researching Drufo to write an article about it. And she has experience taking the complex topic of how Drufo works and distilling it into a way in which the common person will understand. Mrs. Weir's expert opinion, specifically on Drufo, will aid the jury in delivering a just verdict for both parties.
All right. I am a little bit skeptical, but I am going to, given the constraints of Rule 702, I'm going to make this an issue of weight rather than admissibility because it is based upon scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge. I think there's enough reliability there that I'm going to let the witness testify as an expert in modern agricultural technology with an emphasis on fertilizer. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, what is Drufo?
Drufo is a bonding agent that was developed by Lush Fertilizer to be used in their products. Drufo bonds to the grass roots and allows it to wash away less quickly.
When did you write your article about Drufo?
It's hard to get a specific date down, but it was before Dakota got diagnosed with cancer.
Tell the jury more about this article.
I wrote this article questioning the supposed link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's disease because it isn't likely that it actually causes it. From what I've researched, the evidence just isn't there, and there are much clearer links to other fertilizers and cancer.
Tell the jury about these other fertilizers.
Almost every fertilizer contains harmful carcinogens such as nitrates. Nitrates are linked to several types of cancer. This is because they do not often stay in the soil and can contaminate land and water.
Tell the jury, what is Drufo's effects on these carcinogens?
Drufo bonds to the fertilizer's active ingredients, which include phosphorus, potassium, and nitrates, or nitrogen, and cause them to wash away less quickly, which entails for less chemicals needed on the grass.
While you're researching Drufo, did you come to the understanding if Drufo is a pesticide?
Yes, and because of this, Drufo actually doesn't need to use harmful carcinogens that are found in pesticides.
Tell the jury about these carcinogens.
Glyphosate and arsenic are carcinogens that are commonly found in pesticides. They don't need to be used in Lush fertilizer because Drufo already is an effective pesticide.
Ms. Weirs, in your expert opinion, do you think it's likely that Drufo is linked to any long-term health effects in humans?
No, the evidence just isn't there, and there are much clearer links to other fertilizers, pesticides, and cancer.
Ms. Weirs, I would like to talk to you about your family now. What is your relationship to the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs?
He is my twin brother. We don't have the stereotypical twin relationship, but we're family.
Do you know of any jobs Dakota had before his diagnosis?
Yes, he worked at Haven Landscaping.
Tell the jury about Dakota's job at Haven Landscaping.
He was 14 when he first started. He worked there for a while and was exposed to many harmful chemicals. This company allowed its employees to work without protective gear, and Dakota was one of those employees.
Ms. Weirs, in your expert opinion, do you think lacking safety precautions such as these are dangerous to workers?
Yes, working with any type of fertilizer with prolonged exposure without safety gear can be harmful.
And Ms. Weirs, why are you testifying today?
I am here to testify because I believe in my research about this awful disease. I love Dakota, but I believe that Lush did not cause his cancer and that he is going after the wrong people.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Squirrel. Give our judges a moment. All right, Ms. Mishayevich.
May I proceed?
You may.
Good evening, Ms. Weirs. You consider yourself an investigative journalist, true?
That is correct.
You haven't just written about modern agriculture, have you?
I've mainly researched modern agritech for my journalism.
But you've also written about UFOs.
That's not on my witness statement, but I can answer that for you.
Go ahead.
Would you please answer the question then?
No, I would say no. I'm a scientific investigative journalist, and I do not write about things like those. I'm here to bring the true data of things to light.
Now, moving on, Ms. Weers. You were here for the testimony of the plaintiff expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, correct?
That is correct.
You understand that Dr. Rogers has a PhD in agriculture from the University of California, Berkeley, as well as a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, I am laying the foundation for a line of questioning that will go to Ms. Weir's qualifications in the broader scope of this case.
Objections overruled.
Ms. Wears, you understand that Dr. Rogers has a PhD in agriculture from the University of California at Berkeley, as well as a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University, correct?
From what I've heard today, that is correct.
And you understand that Dr. Rogers teaches courses in herbicide selectivity and action at University of California at Berkeley, correct?
That's what I've heard, yes.
Ms. Wears, do you have a PhD in agriculture?
No, as I said, I chose to hold off on college for now.
So you don't have a PhD in agricultural technology?
No, I do not. Even though I've done extensive studying on it, I do not have a PhD.
You don't teach any courses in agriculture or otherwise?
No, I'm a scientific investigative journalist. I do the research and I write articles about scientific topics.
So your opinions on agricultural technology are based solely on your work as a journalist and no formal education?
Yes, I've taken research from reputable government sources and publications by agritech companies, so no.
Yet you believe that this jury should give more weight to your opinions than to Dr. Rogers, correct?
I never said that, but I think I should be entered as an expert. I think my opinion should be taken into consideration.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
May I have a redirect, Your Honor?
You may. Let's just give our judges a brief moment. All right, Mr. Swirl, redirect.
Ms. Weers, have you extensively studied modern agricultural technology?
Yes, I've done a series of articles on modern agricultural technology, and for each one of them, I've spent almost a year in total researching for them, and I've taken sources from reputable governments. I've taken information from reputable government sources and publications by agritech companies.
Have you researched the substance Drupa?
Yes, I researched it extensively for one of my articles that I wrote.
And would you consider yourself an expert?
Yes, I believe my research is enough.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you. All right, is there another witness for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams.
All right, Mr. Bloom. All right. Dr. Williams, good afternoon. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right. Thank you, doctor. Please introduce yourself to our scoring panelists, scoring judges.
My name is Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you. Mr. Bloom.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, what is your current profession?
I'm currently the leader of the Toxicology Research and Development Labs at Lush Fertilizer. I'm also the outgoing chair of the company's ethics committee, and I teach a class in toxicology.
Before we talk about the case today, I'd like to go over some of your qualifications. What education did you receive?
I received my undergraduate through PhD degrees at CSU in various forms of toxicology. I then did a post-PhD program in pharmatoxicology at the University of Utah.
What occupational experience do you have?
I used to be an assistant professor at CU Denver Medical Grad School. I'm currently an assistant professor at the University of New Mexico's College of Pharmacy and a visiting professor at CSU School of Pharmacy.
Dr. Williams, can you please define toxicology for the jury?
Toxicology is the study of the nature, effects, and treatments of several types of toxins.
Do you have any certifications in toxicology?
I'm certified in several forms of toxicology across Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Colorado.
Have you published any papers on your work?
I have published several toxicological papers.
Your Honor, at this time, I offer Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in toxicology under Rule 702.
Any objection, Mr. O'Connor or voir dire?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, so Dr. Williams will be named to be an expert in toxicology.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, sir.
Dr. Williams, I'd like to begin by talking about why you're here today. Why are you here today, Dr. Williams?
I'm here to give my expert opinion.
What is that opinion?
In my expert opinion, Drufo cannot be causally linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or cancer of any kind.
I'd like to discuss a bit of your work at Lush. You testified earlier that you were the head of the Lush R&D labs. What kind of work does that entail?
Largely, I oversee the environmental aspects of our fertilizers.
Have you worked with Drufo in this capacity?
I have.
What conclusions about Drufo did you come to through your work?
Through my work, I have come to the conclusion that there is no causal link that is present between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or any other cancer.
How did you come to this conclusion?
The data I analyzed was all below a normal confidence level.
What does this mean?
This means that there was no elevated risk of users with Drufo getting non-Hodgkin lymphoma compared to non-users of Drufo getting the disease.
What in the data suggested this?
In any large group of people, a small percentage of them are going to develop a disease. This is any large group of people, but in the case of Drufo, these people turn out to be outliers.
I'd like to talk a bit more about Drufo. We've heard a lot of testimony today about Drufo. Can you please tell us how Drufo works?
Drufo essentially binds the plant to the fertilizer, which means that less needs to be sprayed, and as a result, less runs off.
How does this compare to other fertilizers?
Other fertilizers need a lot to be sprayed to meet the requirements, and as a result, a lot runs off into nearby bodies of water, causing a process called eutrophication.
Can you please define eutrophication for the jury?
Eutrophication is when excess nutrients run off onto the surface of a body of water, causing a dense algae bloom to form on the surface of the water. This algae bloom contains bacteria that's harmful to humans, and it makes a lack of O2 in the water, killing any organisms in the water.
And to clarify, does Drufo cause eutrophication?
It does not.
So has the safety of Drufo ever been called into question?
While not over its possible human carcinogenic concern, it was banned in the EU over environmental concerns.
Let's talk about this ban. What specific concerns led to the EU's ban of Drufo?
The European Union's nitrate directive states that no fertilizer that attributes more than an incidental accumulation of nitrate may be used.
Dr. Williams, what is nitrate?
Nitrate is essentially when excess nitrogen runs off of the plants from the fertilizer and into the soil, it is essentially fermented by bacteria that live there.
So how does this nitrate directive apply to Drufo?
While Drufo reduces the amount of nitrates in real-world conditions in the EU's highly unrealistic lab settings, it will meet the threshold for the ban.
How are these lab settings unrealistic?
These are chemicals that Drufo will never come into contact to in the real world, and therefore they are unrealistic.
I'd like to move on to the plaintiff's concerns about Drufo. Have you read Dr. Rogers' study on Drufo?
I have.
What is your opinion of this study?
In my expert opinion, Dr. Rogers' study has three main flaws.
What are those flaws?
Dr. Rogers compares scientifically varying subjects. His study is not peer-reviewed or replicated, and he has a major bias.
Starting with the first flaw, how does Dr. Rogers compare varying subjects?
Dr. Rogers compares farm laborers to casual gardeners to people who are neither, which creates highly inaccurate results.
How does this create inaccurate results?
These people are exposed to a variety of different conditions that could cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And as a result of this, these people could have gotten the disease from anywhere. They could be their shampoo, their toothpaste, whatever.
Moving on to the second flaw, what does it mean for a study to be peer-reviewed?
A study is peer-reviewed when qualified members of the scientific community review it for merit and bias.
What problems arise if a study has not been peer-reviewed?
This means that nobody has looked over the study and it could contain large inaccuracies or bias.
And what is the importance of replication?
For a study's results to be corroborated, several replications of the study have to find the same results. Nobody except Dr. Rogers has found these results, so therefore the study's results were not corroborated, and therefore the study could not have been successfully replicated.
And moving on to the third flaw, how does it appear to you that Dr. Rogers is biased?
Dr. Rogers' entire study set out to find the possible carcinogenic effects of Jufo on humans. When somebody finds what they set out to find, I always question their results because it is my policy to do so, and they most likely have a confirmation bias.
Dr. Williams, I'd finally like to go over your overall conclusions of today's case. In your expert opinion, does Jufo cause cancer?
In my expert opinion, Jufo does not cause cancer.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination, please. Well, let's give the judges a moment. All right. Mr. Okan.
May I proceed?
You may, sir.
Good afternoon, Dr. Williams. You work for Lush Fertilizer, correct?
That is correct.
And they pay for your salary, true?
They do, yes.
And you've actually worked at Lush Fertilizer for nearly a decade, isn't that right?
It's been about a decade, yeah.
Dr. Williams, Lush Fertilizer does not use Jufo in all of its products, right?
Namely Lush Fertilizer.
Dr. Williams, Jufo is banned in France, isn't it?
It's not just banned in France, it's banned in the entire EU over environmental concerns.
And with that being said, you are currently working on a study to submit to the EU, so they will reconsider the Jufo ban, right?
Yes, we are.
Isn't it true that if this jury were to find out that Jufo causes cancer, it would create a whole host of new bureaucratic roadblocks with the EU?
Unfortunately, it would, but I'm still confident that our product is safe, and eventually the EU will see just how safe it is and how revolutionary it is.
And in fact, that would prevent Lush Fertilizer from selling their products containing Jufo to a significant percentage to the global market, right?
Unfortunately, it would, but once again, I am confident that the EU will see how safe this product is.
So, Dr. Williams, it's fair to say that you have a financial bias in the outcome of this case, right?
Even if I do, it does not impact my testimony. I'm here to deliver a testimony based on toxicology. And even if I do have a financial bias, it does not impact my scientific testimony here today.
Can you please restate your answer?
Even if I do have a financial bias, it does not impact my testimony here in court today.
Dr. Williams, you were here for the testimony of the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that Dr. Rogers has a PhD in agriculture and etymology from the University of California at Berkeley, and a Bachelor of Science in agriculture and chemistry from Colorado State University, right?
I am aware of this, yes.
And you understand that Dr. Rogers teaches courses in herbicide selectivity and action at University of California at Berkeley, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that Dr. Rogers does not work for Lush Fertilizer, yes?
Dr. Rogers does not work for Lush Fertilizer, that is correct.
But you do work for Lush Fertilizer, right?
Yes, I do, but it does not impact my testimony today.
And yet you believe that this jury should give more weight to your opinions than to Dr. Rogers.
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Joe Khan, why isn't that argumentative? I think he froze. Mr. Okan, did I lose you?
If I may respond.
Please.
This is not an argumentative question. This is a cross-examination. And I'm allowed to ask any question about how I see fit.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Can you restate the question,
So,
please?
of course. Yet you believe that this jury should give more weight to your opinions than to Dr. Rogers, correct?
Dr. Rogers, while being a scientist, still has a study that is simply not accurate and contains many flaws.
Dr. Williams, one of your criticisms of Dr. Rogers' study is that it has not been replicated. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And as the lead of the toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer, you could have ordered Dr. Rogers' study to be replicated under the conditions that you have suggested. True?
Well, Dr. Rogers' study has not been successfully replicated, but I suppose I could have.
But you haven't ordered that study, have you?
I haven't, but nobody else has seen these results from Dr. Rogers' study.
Dr. Williams, I want to talk about the testimony there you haven't given today. Dr. Williams, you can't tell the jury definitely that Drufo does not cause cancer because that's not how science works, true?
I can't tell the jury because nobody in the scientific community can say that anything is certain. However, I can say with my highest confidence that Drufo is safe in humans and the environment.
So it's true. Is that what I'm hearing?
I cannot say for certain because nobody can, but I do have my highest confidence.
One more question, Dr. Williams. Who is your employer?
Blake Doncourt in Lush.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bloom,
Yes, Your Honor.
anything further?
Redirect, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, does your employment at Lush affect your testimony in any way?
It does not. I am here to tell my opinions on toxicological aspects of this case, and where I am employed does not matter.
And you were asked on cross if you thought that your opinion should be weighted more than Dr. Rogers, but you're not really given an opportunity to explain why or why not that would be. So why or why not should your opinion be weighted more than Dr. Rogers?
Dr. Rogers, while a tenured scientist, has a study that does not show, frankly, any validation. It controls for barely any variables except for Drufo. It has not been peer-reviewed or replicated. And Dr. Rogers himself has a major bias, so this study cannot be accurate.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you. This witness is excused. Are there any other witnesses for the defense?
Your Honor, the defense rests.
All right, thank you. All right, time for closings, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Oka. Did you have a thought or a question, sir? All right. All right, who's closing for the plaintiff?
That is me, Your Honor.
All right. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Ishevich.
All right, may I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, members of the jury, today you have heard evidence from both the plaintiff and the defendant in an attempt to prove that Lush Fertilizer is liable. But at its heart, this case is about a high school kid whose dreams were destroyed when he developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as a result of exposure to Lush Fertilizer. As the plaintiff, it was our job to prove the defendant was negligent and caused Mr. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely true than not. We submit that we have met our burden. I'd like to draw your attention to instructions 2 and 3, which state that we can prove to you that Lush was negligent either by failing to exercise reasonable care to make sure its product was safe, or by proving that Lush knew its product was harmful and failed to adequately warn its consumers. We met our burden by calling 3 witnesses. First, you heard from my client, Dakota Weirs, who spends his free time volunteering at homeless shelters and participating in extracurricular activities. But what truly drives Mr. Weirs has always been his passion for the piano. He spends his he has been playing since he was 7 years old, and he was so talented that he secured a full scholarship to Juilliard. But the debilitating illness he developed as a result of Lush's negligence causes him constant pain and fatigue, making it impossible for him to sit at the piano for more than a few minutes at a time. Mr. Weirs has had everything taken from him, all because he wanted to work a job to save for a future he may never get. Second, you heard from Carson Durst, who worked for years as a product development engineer on Lush's research and development team and was a firsthand witness to its immoral and unethical behavior. Tests performed at Lush revealed that Drufo could contain a carcinogen and could be linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but Lush did not see these risks as important enough to take any precautionary measures. Finally, you heard from Dr. Casey Rogers, who has spent years working to understand the harmful effects of prolonged exposure to chemicals like Drufo. He spoke to the devastating consequences of rushing a product to the market without first ensuring its safety. His study was executed over the span of many years, and its results are clear. Using Lush fertilizer exponentially increases the risks of causing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. These witnesses alone established by a preponderance of the evidence that Lush fertilizer was negligent and is liable for my client's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Lush Fertilizer also called 3 witnesses today, none of whom provided a plausible defense or justification for why the company did not bake its products or include a proper warning label. You heard first from Blake Doncourt, who testified that Lush made a conscious decision not to bake its fertilizer. You saw Exhibit 8, which showed you that Lush still would have made over $1 million in profits each year, even if it had baked its fertilizer to remove any risk that it was carcinogenic. Mr. Doncourt told you that Lush refused to bake its products because doing so would have been simply overkill. Second, you heard from Skylar Weirs, whose testimony was baseless at best and dangerously unreliable at worst. Ms. Weirs has no relevant credentials, and she relied on unverifiable research. Finally, you heard from Dr. Devin Williams, who explicitly admitted that he has a financial bias in the outcome of this case. He could not tell you that Drufo is not carcinogenic because he does not know that to be true himself. Mr. Williams' entire testimony today was a cop-out, an avoidance of the question at hand. All of the defense witnesses testified in the name of profiteering off of the company that continues to exploit its consumers, but their testimonies did nothing to dismantle the ironclad proof that Lush Fertilizer is responsible for my client's life-altering disease and should have included an appropriate warning on its label. We have met our burden, and we ask you to find Lush Fertilizer liable. You will now hear from the defense. Listen closely and pay attention to whether Lush's attorney answers any of our unresolved questions and whether they take any responsibility for its actions. Thank you.
Counsel? For the defense. Wait, let's actually, one more moment, Ms. Hirsch. Let's give our judges a moment. All right. Counsel?
Members of the jury, the plaintiff just tried to tell you that this is a case about a kid who had his dreams ripped from him by Lush Fertilizer, but the plaintiff is misplacing the blame. What Mr. Wheels is going through is not fair, but that doesn't change the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is that Lush Fertilizer is not to blame here. Drufo is not to blame. And essentially, that is what this case is about, misplaced blame. Now, the judge will explain the jury instructions to you further, but essentially, the jury instructions lay out what the plaintiff needed to prove, and the plaintiff needed to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that first, Lush Fertilizer was negligent, and second, that this negligence caused Dakota Wheels' cancer. The plaintiff failed to meet that burden. Now, first, the plaintiff needed to prove that Lush Fertilizer didn't care to protect their customers from a potential danger. But the only evidence that the plaintiff was able to present regarding this alleged potential danger even existing is the faulty study Dr. Rogers told you about. And keep in mind, this faulty study is unreviewed, it's unreplicated, and it's unpublished. Additionally, the only evidence they presented regarding Lush allegedly knowing anything is the clearly falsified email that Mr. Durst brought up. The email that the plaintiff was unable to find when Lush Fertilizer turned over its entire email servers to the plaintiff. The plaintiff is trying to say that Lush Fertilizer doesn't care about its customers, but you heard Dr. Rogers' testimony about how important it was to wear proper protective equipment while working with fertilizers, and you saw his exact recommendations on the Lush label. Additionally, you heard about the research that Lush's research and development team and the EPA put Drufo through, the tests they did, and how they all found that Lush Fertilizer was safe. That's not even mentioning Dr. Williams' testimony. Dr. Williams, a professor with a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology, came up here and he told you about how the data he reviewed and how he came to the same conclusion, that there was no link between cancer and Drufo. Now, second, the plaintiff also needed to prove that this alleged negligence on Lush's part is what caused the plaintiff's cancer. But the plaintiff failed to prove that. In fact, the plaintiff failed to prove that Lush products are capable of causing cancer in the first place. And you heard Dakota Wheels admit that he spent years not wearing the proper protective gear he knew he should have while working with both Lush Fertilizer and with fertilizers from other brands. You also heard Miss Skylar Wheels come up and testify, and you heard her tell you that unlike most fertilizers on the market these days, Lush Fertilizer doesn't contain known hazardous chemicals that have been linked to cancer, such as arsenic and glyphosate. Members of the jury, the plaintiff is trying to place the blame for Dakota's illness on Lush Fertilizer, but the plaintiff hasn't presented any evidence clearing the names of the multiple other fertilizer brands Mr. Wheels worked with. We don't know what warnings may have been on these labels. We don't know what chemicals they may have contained. We don't know if they contained the exact chemicals that Miss Wheels told us about. Now, the plaintiff had to prove both parts of their case today, and they failed to prove either one. They didn't prove that Lush Fertilizer was negligent, and they didn't prove that this negligence caused Dakota Wheels' cancer. It's not fair what Mr. Wheels is going through, and we all feel bad for him. But feeling bad is not the same as causing damage. And the evidence is clear that Lush Fertilizer is not at fault here. The evidence makes it abundantly certain that Drufo is not to blame. Members of the jury, don't let the plaintiff misplace the blame. Find Lush Fertilizer not liable for the plaintiff's claim of negligence. Thank you.
Thank you. In just a moment. All right, and the last word.
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
Ms. Mishevich, yes.
Instead of coming up here and accepting responsibility for its actions, Lush Fertilizer tried to have you believe that Dakota Weirs, a high school kid, is responsible for his own cancer. When you return to the jury room to deliberate, look closely at Exhibit 1, the label Lush fertilizer used on its product. When you do so, examine the ethics of lying by omission. Nowhere on this label does it say what Lush knew about its product, that it may cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I ask, how can the innocent person who used it unknowingly be put at fault?
Wait, 1 second.
If I may ask opposing counsel to mute their microphone.
Thank you. Ms. Misiewicz, go ahead. You've got extra time.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I ask, how can the innocent person who used Lush fertilizer unknowingly be put at fault? Study after study has revealed the dangers of exposure to Drufo, yet Lush has continually failed to take responsibility for customer safety in order to put themselves in the position for ultimate monetary gain. Ladies and gentlemen, we have seen today more than enough evidence that Lush fertilizer is singularly responsible for my client's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We request that you hold Lush fertilizer accountable for its actions and ensure that it cannot infringe upon the safety of any other consumer, with a verdict for the plaintiff. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you. Case is submitted. All right, everyone take a deep breath. Well done. So we will, let's let the other judges do their scoring sheets, and then we'll all talk to you briefly.
Do you have any questions for me, Judge?
No. Well, yeah. I think what we'll do is we'll talk briefly with the participants, and then what else do I need to know?
We're just waiting for the scoring panelists to submit their score sheets, and once they are submitted, you may dismiss the courtroom however you see fit. If you want to talk about how everything went.
Are the other ones still in session, or do you have any idea?
Courtroom 10, 1, 3, 6, and 2 are all dismissed. So a lot of them are coming to a close.
All right, good. All right, we will see if our scoring panelists, once they're done, if they have something to offer, which I'm sure they do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has everybody submitted?
I have confirmation that they have received all of the scoring panelists.
All right, good. Ms. Stamm, do you want to speak to our panelists?
Thank you so much, Judge Schwartz. It's good to see you again.
Likewise.
And to everyone in here, Judge Schwartz gets to hear me say this for the umpty millionth time. Thank you all so much for taking the time to enter into this competition. You all have done phenomenally well. I really appreciate all of your efforts, your hard work. It shows. Keep that in mind. It took a lot for all of you to get here. You've done wonderfully well just to get here. Don't discount that. Yes, there are always things that can be done to improve your individual performance. There is always fine-tuning that needs to be done, no matter what. That's unfortunately a fact of life. But again, you all have done very, very well. For a couple people, Danielle McGowan, on redirect for your witness, Carson. That was a great recovery. If I took the time to specifically write that down so that I would have it in my notes, that means that it was something that was very outstanding. So nicely done. Let's see, Mr. Squirrel, you did a fantastic job on your cross-examination there. I actually noted that you were very thorough, and instead of giving up, you actually persevered. So nicely done there with your cross. You did not get flustered. Didn't matter what was presented to you by the witness. You did a great job there. Mr. Ocon, that was a fantastic direct for your witness as well. And let's see, for defense's closing statement, Ms. Brianna, that was a great use of your theme. You did really, really well. Simple language, believe it or not, is almost always best. It's very difficult to do things in simple terms when you're dealing with theoretically complex information that has been handed out in the middle of a case. As somebody, I've been doing civil litigation for 26 years now. I just counted. It's really sad. But I know. So personal injury, civil litigation, primarily personal injury, but all sorts of civil litigation. It doesn't matter. I've been doing this for 26 years. Simple language almost always prevails, and you did so well with that in your close. And all you had to do was keep coming back to misplaced blame. Very nicely done. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Jasmine, when you had plenty of time to close, I am going to leave you with this. Slow down. It's not a race. When you actually slow your speech down and you drop the tone of your voice and you speak slightly softer, all of a sudden you're controlling everybody and everything in that room. Slow down. There is a tendency to rush and really speak fast and get really excited, but that doesn't work. You need to slow down. And we understand it's late. Everybody's tired, but I just caution you, slow down. You had plenty of time. And don't forget, to all of the attorneys, you can ask for your time check every time you stand up to the microphone. Ask for that time check if you have to, okay? Beyond all of that, thank you all so much to all of you. Thanks to your back supporting team for keeping you here, for making the effort to support your endeavors in this program. Thank you all so much. That's all I've got.
Excellent. Outstanding comments. Thank you. I want to follow up on those. Let's see. Ms. Page.
Hello. Well, first I am going to echo that you guys are wonderful. And it is quite an achievement to get to this point. I know several mock trialers who they fought hard and it would take them years to get to this point in the state competition. I happen to very personally know one mock trialer who actually didn't make it all the way to a national competition until she was in law school, but that's a story for another time and day. And a totally different world on the law school level. But something I also want to agree with is simple language. It actually also helps with the breathing, because then you're not starting to hyperventilate and your mind doesn't start racing when you're looking for that really creative, impressive word. Especially debaters and attorneys tend to suffer from that malady, to look for that most impressive, multi-syllable, super smart sounding word, when really just a simple, soft word will do. And it's actually more powerful. And it does help with the breathing. But a lot of times, a lot of you did really good with that. The witnesses especially did a really good job on both sides and controlling. The attorneys did a good job trying to work with their witnesses, but I noticed that the witnesses really did a good job controlling their story. And, that's just as important as the attorney when you're up there, because that's the only time you get a chance. The attorneys might get, the attorneys get another chance on a cross, and they might get another chance on a closing or an opening. But as a witness, that is your one time to make an impression. And I assure you, each and every one of you did. Overall, everyone did a really good job at making sure to go back to your theory and really drive in your narrative. And that is so important because that is that connected element. It's like dominoes. You have to have those connecting elements, like you build all of your different parts of your whole network, but it means nothing until you put in those connecting lines so that when the topple happens, it's seamless. And both sides did such a fantastic job with that. And then finally, the last thing, even attorneys find this hard. You guys were fearless in your objections and your responses. Fearless. And that is something that will be something you can carry forward, whether you decide to go forward in theater, debate, law school, public speaking of any kind. The fact that you were very professional in how you would respond, but also that you would stand up and actually voice it. Even when you got it wrong a couple times, you still were fearless. You knew something wasn't right and you didn't say, oh, I don't know the exact thing. You actually got up and did it. And that's half the battle, because sometimes you have a very nice judge, like our judge, who will kind of say, well, I think what you mean is this, and that's so helpful because it helps you get that under your belt. So, just fantastic job, both teams. You can tell how much work you put into this. And this is the most action I see most of the time because I'm an admin. I write rules and regulations for the Colorado State Patrol. So a good day for me is to never end up in court. This is just, popcorn fare for me. This is awesome. I loved it. So great job, both teams.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Thomas, Judge Thomas. Didn't hear anything. Let's try one more time. All right. Let me jump in. We weren't able to hear Peter Thomas. My name is Barry Schwartz. I'm a Denver County Court judge. So I'm in a criminal court that doesn't do felonies. We do like municipal violations and petty offenses and that sort of thing. I want to tell you what a terrific job you've done. I'm here with my dog, by the way, who's not supposed to be here. I want to talk about following the theme. First of all, what I want to do is agree with what the other judges said about sticking with your theme. And as an example, I wrote down the promise that Mr. Okan made, and this is just one example because both of you did that. And that is, we're going to meet our burden by calling 3 witnesses. I always wonder if people are going to keep their promises that they made in opening, and they're going to testify to X. And you did. I don't know what the jury would have done, but you made a promise on the opening. I think you basically kept the promise. And then in your closings, you talked about the fact that you kept your promise. So that's what it's supposed to look like. And so you did a fantastic job of that. I always think that if you can, again, agreeing with what the other judges said about keeping it simple, and there's nothing more important than doing that and going slow, even though I'm talking really fast. If I had one complaint about speed, is the experts. And I know that you guys are working on a super tight time frame, but the expert testimony, the experts' qualifications are maybe the most important testimony they're going to provide. And so your experts went through their qualifications so quickly that I couldn't even write it down. And I would offer to you what both of our other judges said, which is that even if you lose good substantive information, It's more important to spend that time making the information you offer helpful. And so if you slow down if you'd have your witnesses slow down, and you as the lawyers, as the people in charge, can slow them down and slather that expertise on rather than just racing through it. So there's no particular order. I have criticisms and really great things to say about everybody's presentation, but we'll just give some examples. So the image that Mr. Okan said is that they rushed the product to market. That's what stuck out on me on opening. And I think that shows the value of using imagery during your opening statements. And, if you could just lay one or two really good images down, that's fantastic. So that's what you said, and that was helpful. I'm not sure that it won the day, but it was immensely helpful. Ms. Hirsch, on your, let's see. Ms. Mishevich, you humanized and you personalized your client, and there's nothing more important. I did a lot of jobs, but one of them was I was a plaintiff's medical malpractice lawyer, and your clients get beat up. So one thing you never want to use is the word "my client." So somebody was guilty of that. You never want to call them, because it's not about you, it's about them. And you always humanize them by calling them by their name. And so I would never use "my client." That said, you humanize and personalize your client well during your direct examination. So I thought that was awesome. Ms. Hirsch, I thought your cross-examination was excellent. You led gently, but you asked leading questions and you did it well. Asking leading questions is hard. One thing that I think is really important is when you're asking questions on direct examination, you want to disappear into the wallpaper and let the witness be your client, the witness, the person whose testimony you're proposing, let them be the star. And so you ask these general questions and keep our eyes focused on the witness. And then on cross-examination, you want to be the star because you want to be saying, you did this, didn't you? You did that, didn't you? And I thought all of you stayed to form on that. And I just want to commend all of you on that. And let's see. I'm sorry. Ms. Hirsch, you did that particularly well. Ms. McGowan, you did a fantastic job on getting your witness personalized and getting the information that we wanted to know about your client, or about your witness, excuse me. Mr. Okan, you could have gone a little bit slower with Dr. Rogers on his expertise. I would have appreciated that more. Let's see. Ms. Bloom, Mr. Bloom, your cross-examination of Dr. Rogers, you started off with one question. You didn't control for other pesticides, right? And as well as Mr. Okan did with that witness, I thought that single question poked a hole in it. And that kind of testimony is like a balloon. It gets bigger and bigger and more obvious, but it only takes one pin to break it. And I thought that to the extent it was broken, you did it with that single question, which is you didn't control for other pesticides. So I guess the lesson to be learned from that is it's fun to build it all up, but the way lawyers are successful is just by the hard work of thinking about the best question and asking one or two really kick-ass questions. One or two really kick-ass questions beat the heck out of 20 moderate, mediocre questions. And so that was a great example by Mr. Bloom of how that is. Let's see. Mr. Hirsch, on Blake Delacourt, you made the witness the focus of the testimony. Ms. McGowan, you did great with respect to Blake Delacourt, except when you slowed down and made it conversant, made it conversational, that was more effective. I think that when people are more conversational with witnesses, they get more out of them. And they're more effective just generally. Mr. Hirsch, you did I don't remember what your redirect was, but it was very, very short. And it was one or two questions, very effective. Again, You don't have to beat it to death to be effective. Ms. Mashevich, with respect to Skylar Weirs, you just simply got that witness to concede that they weren't a scientist. And that was one great question. That's all you need. I really commend you on that great question. Mr. Squirrel, you did one thing I want to talk about all of you doing super well, which is you did this box technique that a lot of lawyers talk about, and it's very effective. And you talk about one thing, and then you get your resolution, and then you say, now I'd like to talk about X. And that is immensely helpful for the jurors. They just, if you bounce around, as I kind of am, people don't really follow it, and they don't really know that you're effective. They don't know if you're being effective. But when you take one subject and you talk about that, you get the great answer, and then you move on to the next one. That's very effective, and you did that quite well. Ms. Mashevich, you did something that was very effective, and that is to Skylar Weirs. You said, do you have a PhD in agriculture? And the answer was no. Do you teach science? No. It's the simple things that are very, very effective. All right, I just have more sort of random thoughts, but what I want to tell you is you guys did particularly well. You kept your promises as lawyers. You were ethical. I think that there needs to be more discussion about this unfair extrapolation thing, because frankly, I wasn't sure of the answer, even though I read the case file, but it's really potentially sort of damaging if somebody gets it wrong. So I'm not really sure if my rulings made sense on any of that, but clarify that. Boy, I'm just all over the place. What I would advise you to do is what I need to do, which is slow down. I couldn't agree more with Judge Stom's statements. Mr. Thomas, can we hear you? I don't think so. It's weird, you don't show as muted. No. All right, it's late. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed working with such great judges, and thank you all. I wish you all very, very well. Have a good night's sleep.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.